Hello, everyone. My name is Allison Dennis. I serve as the Executive Director for the Sitka Center for Art and Ecology. So welcome to all of you as we come together to welcome 5 new residents to the Sitka community and learn about their work. One of my favorite aspects of hosting our resident talks virtually is that it makes it possible for past residents and upcoming residents to join in, connecting our community in a new way. While folks are joining in tonight from far and wide, Sitka is a place-based organization. We acknowledge and thank the first peoples and stewards of this place, who today are actively represented by the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians. We want to thank the Harold and Arlene Schnitzer Care Foundation and Jordan Schnitzer for their extraordinary sponsorship of Sitka, including the Jordan Schnitzer printmaking residency. You'll get to meet another one of our printmakers this evening. Thank you to all of our generous foundations who make our work possible and sponsors who make our work possible. I'm going to read this list, but like really feel it as I say these names. These are the people who contribute in ways above and beyond that make everything Sitka does happen. So thank you, Schwabe, Williamson, and Wyatt, McMinimans, Scott Ceramics, Framing Resource, Brian Potter Design, Park Lane Suites, Lake Oswego Festival for the Arts, Palettes Northwest, Explore Lincoln City, Siltstone Wines, McLean's Printmaking Supplies, the James F. and Marion L. Miller Foundation, the Robert and Mercedes Eichholz Foundation, the Kingsman Foundation, Oregon Community Foundation, Oregon Arts Commission, and Oregon Cultural Trust. We want to thank Sitka's co-founders, Jane and Frank Boyden, for starting Sitka, and our board of directors and countless volunteers, members, and financial supporters for stewarding Sitka's honored past, resilient present, and bright future. And speaking of bright, I have breaking news to share. Thank you for all of you who were able to take part in person or in spirit during the 27th annual Sitka Art Invitational earlier this month. We're just tallying the results, and you're the first to learn that together we sold over $123,000 in art, with proceeds divided 50-50 between the artists and Sitka's nonprofit programs. That includes the cost to Sitka to produce the show. This represents, this is crazy, a 34% increase over Sitka's highest sales year at the Invitational ever. So thank you to everyone who helped steward and evolve the celebration of regional artists and new work. Tomorrow, I literally get to sign paychecks for artists. Over 61% of artists who were represented in the show sold work. It's just one of the best things we get to do. So thank you, Sitka community. Mark your calendars for December 2nd, when winter keynote speaker Michael Wimberly will bring us together for drumming, an extension of language. Among many other accomplishments, Michael has composed for dance companies, including Urban Bushwomen, Joffrey 2, and Alvin Ailey, among others. And his latest release, Afrofuturism, is out on Temple Mountain Records. Sitka resident alumni and musician Soraya Perry is going to co-moderate this talk. So please join us on December 2nd for that. And then our next resident talk will take place at this same time in 1 month from now on December 16th. So you can meet a next cohort of residents who will be coming in as part of the fall and winter cohort. Many of you, we hope, just received our fall and winter guide in the mail. It's beauteous, Brian Potter design, pro bono designed it, and it looks like this. You can find more of, information about all of the events I just said in that guide. And if you didn't get that guide in the mail and would like one, you can just send us a note in the chat and we should be able to make sure that one gets sent to you directly. For those of you who are participating with us on Zoom today, we want to allow as much time for the residents to share as possible. If you do have questions or comments for our presenters, please do share them using the Q&A feature on your Zoom menu. I will just do my best to weave them in as we go, or connect you with the presenter through the chat, or just whatever works to get as many questions fielded as possible. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our first presenting resident. A first-generation Latinx writer, Mason Langston, who goes by the pen name Ernest Langston, published 2 novels. His short stories have appeared in SoMa Literary Review, TajMahal Review, and the Pitkin Review. He holds a BA in English and a certificate in professional and technical communications from San Jose State University, a certificate in writing from University of Washington, and an MFA from Goddard College. Currently, Langston works on a collection of short stories and resides in Seattle, Washington. Technically, you are all muted as Mason unmutes, but I promise Mason and all of our presenters can hear you in their hearts. So please join me in making some joyful noise and welcoming Mason Langston to Sitka.
Oh, hello, everyone. I want to thank Sitka for inviting me here. It's been great so far. And so, yeah, I just want to say thanks again for inviting me. It's been great. And I want to just kind of reiterate that my name is Mason Langston. I'm a writer. I write in various mediums. And I do go by the pen name of Ernest Langston. I'm going to be here as a resident up until December 7th. And I do reside in Seattle, Washington. I get a couple of questions about how do I approach my creativity? Where do I get my, how do I approach my creative work, and how and where do I find my ideas? And I've kind of summarized it in this paragraph here, that my work comes from how I perceive the world around me. I write from a point of empathy, free from judgment, to greater understand my finite existence and help others navigate through theirs. My stories are testimonials of my emotional experiences and discoveries intertwined with ever-present mysteries. And here are a few of the novels I've written. Here are a couple of the covers. This one I'm particularly fond of. This is just a French edition of Born from Ashes, which is my first. And this Beyond for Everyday Cigarettes is my second. The current project I'm working on is a magic realism project, and it's called Songs from Grace. I'm going to read to you from one of the stories, an excerpt from one of the stories in that collection. The title is Just Passing Through. So we're going to jump into it. Give you just a little bit of catch up, is that the protagonist leaves the East Coast, leaves Manhattan. He's a property manager there. And he's driving to Seattle through a series of events. He gets this job, but it's cross country. It's on the West Coast. And while he's driving across the country, he's in this wooded, desolate stretch of road. And he's noticing all these roadside altars. And he's so distracted and by these crosses along the highway that he ends up in a ditch, an irrigation ditch, and he's wounded. He wakes up some hours later and he's wounded, and he has a puncture wound, and there's no one around. But he hikes into the woods up to the ridge as to take a look around as a vantage point. So this is where we're going to jump in. When I reached the forest floor, the smoke, thick and pungent, clung to my damp skin and led me toward a rundown 2-story house, which was nestled within a semicircle of pine trees. These towering sentinels, with their branches extending far from their massive trunks, stood in a horseshoe formation, curving around the rear of the house. Countless tree limbs intersected into each other to create an awning of some sort, reminding me of an old-fashioned handheld fan displayed far and wide above the house smoking chimney. A glowing kerosene lamp hung off the porch banister, several feet from the door. Birds began chirping overhead at first, then deeper into the forest, signaling dawn was approaching. A handmade sign, cut from a pine tree round, hung on a white post next to a shabby wooden picket fence. The words "Forget Me Not Bed and Breakfast Inn" were carved out with a carpenter's tool and painted with care in what looked like to be sparkling gold paint trimmed with red. The dilapidated property, a once thriving bed and breakfast, a countryside B&B for romantics, nature lovers, and weary travelers, was now nothing of the sort. It was hard to imagine the last time when this place had seen a guest. This was not the campsite I had imagined some time ago, I thought, unlatching the gate and entering to the overgrown garden toward the window door. The patina doorknob felt cold and wet to the touch. There was an unexpected and familiar smell to the lobby. Someone had just baked a batch of oatmeal cookies. A fresh log sat askew in the stone fireplace among the heap of flames and red coals. "Hello," I said, thawing myself by the fire. A sweating glass of water rested on top of an ornate mahogany front desk, next to an open guest ledger. "Is anybody here?" Above my head on the second floor, a pair of heavy footsteps shuffled about as if I startled someone. "Just a moment, please," a man said on the second floor. "Help yourself to a cookie, I'll be down in a moment." His feet shuffled some more, followed by some loud clanging. In the firelight, I again inspected my leg. The bleeding had stopped and coagulated around the puncture. I moved closer to the flames to have a better look, resting my mud-caked shoes on the hearth. I rested one hand on the mantle for balance and pressed the black crusted hole. Clear liquid seeped out from the edges. I was worried about infection, but felt safer indoors next to the fire. A middle-aged man dressed in threadbare gray slacks and a cream-colored shirt came down the staircase. He appeared to be in his 60s, slim-waisted with a pot belly and sunken chest. He carried a red monkey wrench in his right hand and smoothed his silver hair with his left, and walked with the gait of a man who never hurries. "Welcome to the What in God's name happened to you?" he said, stopping at the bottom of the stairs. But before I had a chance to respond, he noticed the trail of mud across the hardwood floor, across the area rug, all the way to where I stood. He twisted his mouth into a knot, his eyelids lowered to half-mast. We both stared at each other for a moment, which felt like a lifetime. "Well, are you going to stand there dripping all over the place, or are you going to tell me what in the hell happened?" he said, positioning himself behind the impressive wooden desk. "I had an accident," I said, making sure not to dirty up the lobby any more than I already had. "What kind of accident? Are you hurt? Did you hurt anybody? Well, come on, I need to know how concerned I should be." "Are you alone?" he said, tossing a hand towel. He narrowed his focus on my leg, then my eyes. "I crashed my car. It's in a ditch some miles back, off the highway. I climbed the..." "Yes, you climbed the ridge, and now you're here. Are you hurt?" he said, taking a long gulp from the sweating glass. "Follow me, let me have a look at you." He circled out from behind the desk, cut midway across the room, turned around and stopped. He wiped his hand on his pants. An odd feeling hung between us, the kind one gets when approaching a stray dog. "Well, what are you waiting on, stranger? I don't bite," he said, softening his eyes and showing his small teeth. "Come on, the first aid kit's this way." In the kitchen, he instructed me to lie on the table without my shoes, assuring it was okay. He said, "Yeah, this old place, it was a fine place years ago, but I haven't seen a guest, I don't know. If I had to say, I'd say not since the county put in that new road." He brought out a white box with a red cross and placed it on a stool. "The damn county rerouted traffic away from this place. Killed the business, more or less. You know how those things go." "Well, that's what I was told anyway," he said, placing a pot of water on the stove to boil, next to a tray of cookies. "Go ahead, lie down, partner. Be assured I've done my share of patching up the wounded. I was a field medic in the war, trained by the US Army." He washed his hands in the sink, hummed a melody for a moment, before introducing himself as Stanley McKinley. My friends call me Stan for short. Stan, the best traveling salesman in all the land, they'd say. And I was too. I sold life insurance, he said. Paused a moment, stared at the semi-fogged window above the sink, then mumbled something under his breath. He grew quiet for another moment, then cleared his throat. But you know, that was a long time ago. Withdrawn in silence, he continued washing his hands. Steam rose from the sink, swirling up around his head, like vaporous white flames burning from his shoulders. At the same time, the pot boiled over, sending water splattering onto the cookie tray. Listen, I know what you're thinking, he said with his back turned, cutting off the water. What's your name again, friend? He turned around, leaned against the sink, and dried his hands on a red and white dish towel, allowing the pot to boil over. Richard, but my friends call me Richie for short, I said, making slow work of removing my shoes. Something caught Stanley off guard because he started to open his mouth as if to say something, then remained quiet and turned away. He removed the pot from the stove and placed it closer to the table. If I could use your phone, I don't want to trouble you, I said, moving to stand, but swayed a bit off balance. Stanley grabbed a hold of my shoulder and elbow and guided me onto the table. Easy, fella. We don't need you cracking your skull in my kitchen. Take a load off and relax. You could use a phone, sure, but there's no hospital around here for miles. It's best if you relax a bit. You lost blood and you ain't thinking straight. I want to call for my tow truck. Everything I own is in my car. I need to. He handed me a glass of water, which he drew from the sink faucet and told me to drink. And when I had finished that glass, he gave me another and persisted that I drink more to rehydrate myself. He said, you know, no records coming out here anytime soon. I thought you should know that, so you could put that idea out of your mind. Rain is coming. And that concludes my reading. If anyone would like to get a hold of me, you could visit my website. Please do, drop me a line, feel free. You could visit me at ernestlangston.com. I want to thank Sitka again, and thank you all for showing up and lending me your ear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mason. I love audiobooks, but there is something so much more luxurious about being read to, specifically to you, to us in person. So thank you for kicking off tonight with such a beautiful reading. Ernest Mojgani is the current Poet Laureate of Oregon and a 2021 Academy of American Poets Laureate Fellow, a two-time individual champion of the National Poetry Slam and winner of International World Cup Poetry Slam. He has performed at hundreds of universities across the US and festivals around the globe. His work has appeared on HBO, National Public Radio, and in the pages of the New York Times, as well as in the recent anthology, African American Poetry, 250 Years of Struggle and Song. The author of 5 books of poetry and an opera libretto, Mojgani's first children's book is forthcoming from Chronicle Books in 2024. A native of New Orleans, he currently lives in Portland, Oregon, but tonight he is our guest. So please place a hand on your Poetry Slam diaphragms and welcome Ernest Mojgani to Sitka.
Thank you, Allison. Yeah, hello everyone. Hope you're doing good. So yeah, my name is Ernest, and currently I'm in my home in Portland, and but we'll be returning to Sitka this week, and so very, very excited to get to spend a chunk of time there. One of the things that I really, really love about when I've had the opportunity to do residencies is getting to carry with me there things that I've been wanting to explore for a bit, but also letting whatever my relationship to the space that I'll be in infer and guide and suggest what is the thing that I will spend my time doing. And so in my time in Sitka coming up, like there's a plethora of things that I would love to be working on, and hopefully one or two of those things will present themselves as being in the driver's seat sometime over the next like week and a half. I was going to share with y'all maybe a poem or two, as well as some of my visual work, because ideally I would love to just be basically spending the next 6 weeks. If I spent the next 6 weeks doing nothing but painting, I would be a very, very happy person. I'm sure whatever I do over the next 6-7 weeks, I'll be a happy person. But yeah, I'll do a poem, and then I'll share with y'all some of the pictures that I make. Yeah. Come closer. Come into this. Come closer. You are quite the beauty. If no one has ever told you that before, know that right now, you are quite the beauty. There is joy in how your mouth dances with your teeth. Your smiles are simply a sign of how sacred your life actually is, so step into it. Come closer. Know that whatever God might be, they asked the world around them to help make something of worth. Woke from dreaming, scraped the soil from spaces stuck somewhere inside themselves, made you and were happy. You make that Lord happy. Come into this. Come closer. Know that something softer than us, but just as holy, planted pieces of itself into our feet that we might one day dance our way back. Know that you are almost home. Come just a little bit closer. There are birds beating their wings beneath your breastplates. Gentle sparrows aching to sing. Come aching hearts, come soldiers of joy, doormen of truth. Know that my heart was too big for my body, so I let it go. And most days this world thins me to where I'm just another cloud, forgetting another flock of swans, having shaved off so many of my corners that I felt at home only in the shape of a ball, bending myself so far backwards that the song of my mother believed I was returning home. But believe me when I tell you that somehow my soul still manages to squeeze itself into very narrow spaces. Place your hand beneath your head when you sleep tonight, and perhaps you will find it there. Making beauty as we sleep, making beauty as we dream, making beauty as we turn over. When we turn over in the ground, may the ghosts that we've asked our answers of do that turning, kneading us into crumbs of light and into this love thing called life. Come into it. Come, you wooden museums, gentle tigers, little giants. I see teacups upside down, glowing across your grins. Your hearts are like my hands. Some days, all they do is tremble. I am like you. I'm just like you. I too at times am filled with so much fear, but like a hallway must find the strength to walk through it. Walk through this with me. Through this church of blood, bone, and muscle that is ours, there's a doorknob that glows like chance before you. Grab it, turn, and pull. Step through, back straight, chin up, eyes open, hearts loud. Walk through this with me. Walk through this with me. Thank you. So I wanted to share some of the other work that I do, and the work here is my background is originally I found my way to writing and performing poetry through originally being on a path to being a visual artist. When I started art school back in 1995, poetry became the outlet that art had once been, once art became the thing that I had to do for schoolwork. And so originally I set out to become an illustrator, to draw comic books and illustrate stories. And while words has been the focus, the larger focus for the last 15 years, I've been trying to build more space to have a return to more visual work, and whether that is sequential and illustrative, or whether that is painting. But also what I really love is finding the ways in which that both text and picture are able to find some sort of marriage. So I'm going to stop talking, or at least start moving some of this stuff. So hold on, here we go. Some of these are just illustrations that I've done over the years. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not quite sure exactly what it is I will arrive at doing in the space that I'll be in at Sitka. I'm really excited, basically, simply to just get my hands dirty and see what happens from having paint and ink on my hands, paint and ink on my clothes, cutting up pieces of paper and gluing them down, and whether that is shapes of color or scribbles of words. As I said earlier, a lot of the stuff that I really want to be concentrating on right now is painting and seeing where those things are allowed to leave me with a greater sense of abandonment and less preciousness in art making. There's a cover of, I've been fortunate enough to get to do the covers of all of my poetry books. Thankful for that from my publisher. So this is my book, Songs from Under the River. There's a book of mine called The Pocket Knife Bible, which is also an illustrated book. These are some of the illustrations that run through it. These are some of the paintings that, like, I was in at Caldera in the springtime, and this was a painting that I started working on while I was there that originally started off as this painting and then started becoming this, but I don't think this is yet finished. But anyway, some more painting work from random stuff over the years. In the summertime, I wrote a poem and printed it out very, very large to be installed at these windows here in Portland off the Burnside Bridge. So they're like about like, it's like 8 windows, and the sheets of paper with the poems on them are about like 2 or 3 feet by 10 feet or so. So I'm one of the things that I'm hoping happens while I'm in residency at Sitka is to, as I was saying, find that marriage between text and picture. And I'm hoping that, like, by spending more time with engage with the visual work, I'm able to create more work that is kind of like, you know, speaking to those last couple slides that I showed you of what does it mean to take larger pictorial work that is actually textual based and introducing that into public spaces. So we'll see how that goes. Thank you all so much. I will now pass this baton back to Allison and to whomever else is next up. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you, Anis. Got some comments coming in for Mason and for Anis. Nancy writes, Mason, thank you for your reading. Wonderful. Let's see what else I've got. Ryder Cooley, who's another fall Sitka resident cohort participant, writes, Mason, wonderful reading. And yes, I recognize your empathy when you were talking about the mice at the meet and greet. XOX, Ryder. Another message for Mason. Thank you, Mason. Your photo reminded me of the old manse, the home of Ralph Waldo Emerson's grandfather. I so kept imagining I was there while I was listening to your story. Carrie, while Anis was reciting his poem, just commented, wow. And Jane shared, lovely, Anis. Thanks everyone for participating in the conversation. Okay. Dr. Sarah Thompson is a community ecologist who specializes in studying how the marine and terrestrial environments connect and interact. Dr. Thompson's particular areas of research are community ecology, climate change and species interactions, behavioral ecology, and spatial ecology. Please help me welcome Dr. Sarah Thompson to Sitka.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm really honored to be here at Sitka among the other residents. It's been really exciting to hear about the work of what other residents are doing. I'm just going to talk briefly about one of the ongoing sort of long-term projects I've been working on and am excited to share. I guess it's really a story about how incredibly powerful indirect interactions can be within simple food webs, and also about how climate can influence species interactions and the implications for future climate change. So I consider myself to be a community ecologist, and I'm particularly interested in birds on islands. But I'm going to back up first and just sort of define what community ecology means to me. There's probably various ways of defining it. But essentially, it's all about all of the organisms that form a web of interactions like predation. So owls eat mice, which eat grass seeds and many other things, or other species that, similar species that compete for resources, for example. So basically we can look at a network of interactions within a food web, what eats what, who competes for resources, for example. But it's also really place-based. So the organisms that all live in the same region or even the same island and interact either directly or indirectly. And so since I worked on oceanic islands for a long time, I'm really interested in how these really different ecosystems interact and influence each other, like the marine and the terrestrial environments. So for example, here's the map of the Channel Islands in Southern California. The arrow is pointing towards Santa Barbara Island, which is part of the Channel Islands National Park. It is about 60 kilometers offshore. And on this 1 square mile island, 2.5 square kilometers, there's a threatened nocturnal seabird called the Scripps murrelet. And so the entire world population, which is maybe 7,000 individuals, nests on just 10 island groups within that orange blob, and the winter range in the ocean is in blue. So Santa Barbara Island, which is shown here, is one of the largest and most important. And so these murrelets nest in small rocky crevices and shrubs along the edges of the island. So they're just a quick bit about them, because Scripps murrelets are just really interesting. They're relatively long-lived, so they live to be about 35 years, we think, and they only lay 1 or 2 eggs in a year. And after about 35 days, the eggs hatch, and within 3 days of hatching, both parents and the chicks leave the island, waiting together for nightfall, and they head out far away on the open ocean, and they do not return until the following year. So the murrelets arrive in the spring to breed and only come to the island under cover of night because they're nocturnal. But their main predators are also active at night, and so there's an island endemic subspecies of deer mouse, and that eats the eggs, and then the adults are killed by a resident breeding population of barn owls, and in some years this is fairly intensively. So just so you get a sense of what this island is like, there are no trees at all. The interior of the island is covered mostly by this non-native grassland, and it is bounded by cliffs up to 193 meters high. There are 5 small canyons, and these cliffs and canyons are covered by these low shrubs and cactus. So despite this picture, it actually rarely looks like that, and it's mostly a desert island with very little rainfall and very dry. But the rain that does fall in the winter is highly variable and has a really dramatic influence on terrestrial productivity. So specifically, one unique feature of this island is that the deer mice exhibit apparently cyclic dynamics where they reach extremely high densities, like some of the highest known anywhere. And then crashes down, and then the owl population rises and falls in response. So these variations are actually linked to winter rainfall, which in this dry, semi-arid desert region is usually very little, but occasionally there are rainfalls, or winters with really heavy rainfall. And in this region, heavy rains are usually, but not always, linked to El Nino events. And this has been happening for a really long time. So the island experiences these repeated climate-driven terrestrial resource pulses, where the sudden increase in rainfall sets off a chain of reactions that could quickly progress from a flourishing of vegetation, and that greenness we can actually see from space. That's how dramatic it is. And that leads to peaks in the abundance of the deer mice and barn owls. But once the drought returns, the mouse population drops, the owl population drops, and murrelets then face increased predation from the owls on the island, on the adults, and predation on their nests from the deer mice. So there are other regional oceanographic indices that are also linked to patterns of drought in this area. So along with El Nino, that means this looping ecological cascade that ultimately begins in the ocean, ends up circling back onto the marine food web via the murrelets. So one of the lucky things that happened while I've been working out on the island was this discovery of barn owl cave. So barn owls are samplers essentially of whatever small prey is available and bring those prey items back to where they're roosting or nesting. And so as part of my work, I had been collecting those owl pellets and examining what was in them. And so one of the locations that I was getting those was Barn Owl Cave. And after several years of getting up there, I was wondering, I wonder if things have been accumulating in here for a long time. And so after a long process of getting people to come out and do a proper dig and gathering all the bones out there, we have a collection of almost 500,000 bones that have been found from this one location on this island. And so we've been able to do radiocarbon dating on those bones. So now we know that this record represents what has been happening on the island for about 1,200 years, so over 1,000 years of what the owls have been eating on this island. So we have this record of that, and also proxies for rainfall and also ocean climate change. So that becomes really important, as we're thinking about the uncertainty with future climate change, being able to have this story from the cave of what's been happening for 1,000 years, and maybe that will give us some insight into the future. And so, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Got just a few more comments coming in. Ryder, Anis, your fellow resident, says, I love the window installation. Looking forward to your return to Sitka. And Mary shares, so wonderful to hear directly from authors and poets reading their work. Thank you. I couldn't agree more. And there's a question for Anis and Mason about where your work is available for purchase. And maybe if the two of you, I know you shared some websites, but maybe if you just want to type information in the chat for people who are interested in finding your writing and other works. And next, Deborah Thompson was born in Toronto, Ontario. She is a contemporary visual artist, educator, and curator based in Nelson, British Columbia. Her practice includes painting, drawing, collage, and sculptural installations. Thompson has an associate's degree in fine art from the Ontario College of Art and Design, a BA in Southwest Cultural Studies from Prescott College, and an MFA in visual art from the University of Montana. Thompson has received awards for both her studio and curatorial work from the Columbia Kootenai Cultural Alliance, Osprey Foundation, and Canadian Museum Association. She has exhibited in the public galleries around British Columbia and the Western states. And very recently, she was in residence at Sitka, participating as part of our Jordan Schnitzer printmaking residency program. Please join me in making some noise and welcoming Deborah Thompson to the Sitka community.
Thank you, Allison, for that introduction. I'm going to try to get my slides up here, and then I'll speak some more here. First I wanted to thank Sitka for having me there. I just finished up residency, the Jordan Schnitzer printmaking residency, and I felt very honored to be invited to that residency, and I was over the moon and had to wait 2 years to get through most of the pandemic to come, but finally managed to get there. And this is a picture of Julia de Mario, who is the master printmaker for Sitka and for the Jordan Schnitzer printmaking residency. And I wanted to give a big thank you and tons of gratitude for her skill and passion and just desire to work collaboratively, because it's very much a collaborative process. And it was just really interesting and fantastic. So there we are, both standing by the wheel. And I also wanted to acknowledge too that I've just been really aware as I got home that I'm on the waters of the Columbia River up in the headwaters, and it drains very close to here in Astoria. So I'm in a very wet area that collects a lot of water and moisture that makes its way finally to very close to you guys. So there's this connection I'm feeling. I was able to come to the residency early. Sitka invited me to come early, and I jumped on the opportunity and was able to spend 5 days or 4 or 5 days wandering around, sort of dividing my time between wandering around. This is up in Cascade Head, of course, looking at the confluence, and doing some drawing, trying to generate ideas for prints and plates. And that's that beautiful beach that you have to take the kayak across, which is kind of like a little mythic journey to get there. And I managed to get there one of my last days. But as I spent more and more time, every day I'd get a little walk out somewhere. The place grew bigger and bigger and enveloped me. And really, my dreams were even green for a while. But I felt a real immersion there and a real primal nature to the environment. I really missed it when I left, and it's just a spectacular, beautiful place. And those 5 days I wandered around and picked up things and drew them. And so this is just a little stick with some lichen and some barnacles on some rocks. So I was really bringing them back to my cabin and trying to figure out how to express what I was feeling with the environment and being there. So I was sort of all over the map. I really enjoyed the library. I would go up and sort of steal images from books to work from, and sort of trying to integrate my work and the experience there. So there's just some of the drawings. One of the drawings I found, one of the first days I was there on the beach, I found a cormorant that had been sort of torn apart. So I really like things like that. And so I found the claw and did a couple drawings of it. And then that became one of my early prints that I worked on. And, you know, working with Julia, she took me through a whole bunch of processes, and it's very process-based type of work. And we did soft ground and hard ground and aquatint and spit bite and white ground and lots of burnishing. I learned a lot about burnishing and also engraving. So it was just the whole range of working on how to work on a copper plate and develop an image. And one of the great gifts I think Julia brought to the collaboration was to sort of understand my work in a way that she could guide me into the sort of the layering or the processes that would be best suited to bring my work forward. So this is the claw, and I think it's the final version, and it's got a variety of techniques. So we've gone in and gone back out and gone in and out kind of thing. So the editing and subtracting, and it was quite an amazing process. And one of the things that came forward in my drawing was a series of female figures, and they are sort of hybridized human nature forms of the feminine. And you know, titles for them, my working titles for them in the studio, printmaking studio, were that they were the hags. And I mean that with great respect and endearment towards the feminine and feminine energy in our world. And a hag is a very old English term that is sort of synonymous with witch, but it really means one who sits on the fence and is got a foot both in this world and the other world, or the underworld. And I'm very fascinated with that. Being an artist, I feel like we're a bit of a hag sitting on the fence. My studio is certainly the other world, and my home is this world, and my life out there. So they really resonated with me, and I felt honored that these female forms came. So this is the first one, or one of the ones I did. This is a drawing of what became Fern Hag. So it would start like that, and then Julie and I would discuss how to begin to develop it into a print. And this portrait came as well, or from, I think a lot of my portraits were from images in the library, and mostly Renaissance images, Renaissance drawings. And I think this is a Rosso. And then one of the things that interested me as I worked with processes and our test plates. Julie and I did test plates the first day and the first couple of days. And one of the things I really liked was making little paper cutouts and overlapping them and then running those through the press, sort of like a collage, building a collage and then running it through the press where it would leave an imprint with different tonal qualities and line. So I really like that. And it reminds me a lot of the work I'm doing now at home, where I'm working with collage and cut out paper pieces. So here her hair or her helmet almost looks like a helmet is a paper collage that I've built, and then we've placed it very carefully on her head, and it's run through the press. And I really liked all the tonal qualities and the unpredictable and sort of abstractness of it, and plus that lovely delicate white line that is around the edge of the shape. So this is I call her forest hag, or I guess I was calling her bark hag. So I wanted her hair to be sort of bark-like, and I was really enjoying. There was a tree right outside my cabin that has this. As soon as I'd walk out, this amazing bark, and so I thought that's what she is. So there's other things. There's soft ground. Is the drawings done with the soft ground, which is found was a nice way to transfer my drawing onto a plate. And then down here, her garment is spit bite, which is a process I also really thought was pretty amazing. Very much like a watercolor, so that I could get my paintbrush out and feel at home with the spit bite. So here we are back to the fern hag, and this is the drawing that would then be transferred to the plate. So we were learning all these processes of layering, and it was really fascinating. And there it is in the acid bath getting etched, and Julie has stopped out the areas that aren't going to be etched, and then allowing just the areas that to be etched to be exposed to the acid. So it was all these amazing things. She ran around behind me all the time and did all this great magical work. This is figuring out where to put the fern. So the fern skirt is done in 3 different ways. It's got hand drawn on there, which was etched, and then it'll have these cutout. It has these cutout paper fern fronds. I guess they're licorice ferns. I don't know. I think that's most of them were. And then they're really it's sort of embossed into the plate, I guess. And then I am also going to take a Sharpie in a little bit here and hand draw some on too as well. I didn't know Sharpie was a etching tool. It's actually a great etching tool, a great part of the process. So this is Fern Hag's hat, and it's to emulate lichen, the lichen in the forest, and it gets pressed into. Where's my little arrow? There it is. So this is just about to go through the press. The plate has been sensitized, and we're putting down all the collage pieces. So it's very exciting. There's Julia lining it up and getting ready to run the press. And there I am fiddling with some more fronds, and with my Sharpie in my hand, I'm going to free draw some onto the plate. And this is over at the spit bath. There's about 7 stations that you move around to in the printmaking process, or Julie moves around to most of them, but I do get to go to some too. And they have all different functions, and they're very specific. And here I'm painting on I think I'm painting on spit bite into the lichen hat, trying to get some darker tones in there. And burnishing. Julie's in the back preparing the second plate for the final print. And I'm burnishing the fern hat. So burnishing was something that was certainly very tricky at the beginning, and I got a little bit of a hang of it anyways. But it was a great process. There's another view of the printmaking studio. We're at Julia running a print through, just about to pull one off. And there's the final plate for Fern Hag, and the plates are quite beautiful. And here's the final, I think this is the final proof. We added a little bit, Julie added a little bit of green ink to the black to kind of warm it up. And I'm not sure this one has the green ink or not, but that's the final image. And then this is Tortoise Hag. And she went through a bunch of versions. And then once I sort of really got an idea of what I was doing or what was possible, I changed her completely. And it's not at all like the first one, but she went through a few versions before I panicked and stayed up and drew a new tortoise hag. So here she is. And one of the fun things about it is I'm again, this collage. So I built her garments, and she's got a little hat and her shell. And I thought that was really fun. And then it's pressed in to the plate. And here Julie has stopped out all the drawing part, and it is ready for me to wash some spit bite over it and sort of emulate the water and the sky. And this will be this is a 2-plate print. So there's the black and white drawing aspect of the image, and then there's the color fields of the blue sky and the green water. So this is just about to get spit bit. And there's Julia drawing. She is working on the second color plate, transferring the drawing onto that. There she is, tortoise woman. And I think this is the final proof. I'm not quite sure if it is, but I think it is. So there's a bunch of different things. I got to do a little bit of hard ground engraving, which I really liked. And then of course a spit bite and some, and lots of soft ground drawing. The work with the feminine, these feminine characters really continues the work I'm doing in my studio now and have been doing for a long time, working sort of with an archetypal idea of the feminine. And I hope that in their connection to nature, they're even more empowered. Julia setting the timer for the acid bath, really important thing. And there's the final plates all lined up at the end of my 2 weeks. And there are the final proofs on the wall. So it was, it was sad to leave, and I missed the center and the experience tremendously. But I'm really excited that Julia let me know the prints are on their way today, and I'll get to see the final ones and sign them and send them back. So it was just a fantastic experience, and beyond what I could have imagined. I'm just going to flip you through a few of these. This is what has been going on in my studio in the last couple of years, and you can see how much they relate to the plates. There's some similarities there. And this body of work is called Once We Were Whole, and it just explores the idea of what it was like to be beyond all the divisiveness and beyond our cultural norms, and to be really connected to nature, to be part of nature again. And these are all about well, they're all my size. So they're about 5 feet high, these figures. So they're about 6 feet in total, and they're all paper and drawn. And these are collaged together. And right now I'm in a beginning of a stop animation motion project. And I'm working with this type of format, but none of the pieces will be collaged on. They'll all be able to move. So the figures will actually continue their journey in a narrative form. And I was working with cutouts even before that. So here's some cutouts. This is how it all started. I began to cut out stencils, draw faces and cut them out and make stencils, and then build my paintings with them. And also I ended up developing these sculptural pieces that swing. So this body of work is called Pendulum, and it looks at the Greek god of Pan, who is the source of our connection to nature in Greek mythology. I think that's it. And I'll stop sharing the screen there. Thank you. And I'm immensely grateful for the experience. It's a fantastic program.
Deborah, thank you so much. I've got some comments coming in for you. The claw is stunning.
Oh.
I love hearing about gathering inspiration. I'm stuck and seeking some. Your story inspires me to just draw and respark my energy. Thank you. Love your hags, feel like I'm there too. Wow, Deborah, this exploration and evolution of your art is really interesting. And then we've also got some comments and questions for Sarah. And Sarah, I'm wondering if you might want to type some answers into the chat as we move to our last presenter. There's a comment, fascinating, Sarah, amazed to hear Merlet's lived so long, amazing research. And then a couple questions. The first is, what kind of questions do you plan to explore with that wonderful record of cave wildlife? So what questions are you exploring? And then also, Sarah, are the bones from the owl caves available for public viewing, or are there any public images? So curious. Thanks everyone for being chatty tonight. Okay, we have one more presenter. Qinqin Liu is an interdisciplinary artist with a PhD in biology and ecology studies, as well as art education from University of California at Davis and Berkeley, University of Minnesota, New York Art Students League, Otis College in Los Angeles, and the School of Visual Arts in New York. Qinqin has a long-term passion in landscape art for biodiversity and watershed ecosystems, and creates artwork to envision questions about climate risks, environmental relationships, and human vulnerability. Qinqin works primarily in drawing, Chinese ink, watercolor, acrylic, mixed media, and collage with natural materials and objects. Qinqin's artwork is inspired by natural beauty and great values of biodiversity and Mother Earth, as well as culture. Qinqin was taught Chinese ink painting and calligraphy before coming to the US, integrating Chinese calligraphy and design elements into Western art styles and connecting art and science contribute to the unique character of Qinqin's impressionist and abstract work. Please welcome Dr. Qinqin Liu to the Sitka Center.
Thank you so much. And I think everyone already showed a lot of interesting stuff, and that helped me to set up the foundation for what I should talk about. So I do not need to show the beautiful setting of Sitka. That's really inspiring, you know, like Deborah showed well. And we went to walk out together in the beginning to touch the bases, to get to know the environment. So I thank you so much to invite me to this beautiful and inspiring place and give me an opportunity in the deep wood without TV, no interruption in the daily complex schedule and a noisy environment, just in a deep rainforest, talking with nature and thinking about your life, thinking about something from a small to big. And so I painted this art. I start thinking myself, it's like a seeds cross from ocean, from east to west, as a cross-cultural messenger from the feather I collected in the ocean walk, the beach walk here. So I know my talk is like, you know, from east to west, that took me 40 years back in China from Cultural Revolution as a village teenager, and come here as an interdisciplinary artist. Took me more than 40 years, and I only have 10 minutes. So, and I will cut long story short and just give you some spotlight and example. And also I put my website here. You can see more of my art and my email. You can contact with me. You will have some question. I can answer to you in the future. And so let's going on. So this, the headline is a piece of art I did in the Sitka with inspiration of the environment here. And this is the story that when I was in China during Cultural Revolution, at that moment, that's 1970, I didn't know how big impact that would be in my life. But what the situation is, and I grew up in China in capital city of Qing Dynasty. And during Cultural Revolution, there's 10 years now college. So we all went to countryside. And so from the city to countryside is really big, deep hill to climb. And it's very challenging, sometimes scary. As a teenager, you go there, there's no water faucet, there's no store to buy food. There's no TV, no movie, no theater, no light sometime in the night. And so is this type of environment is there, you know, as a teenager, yeah, you're pretty scared in a way. But I think art helped me, lift me up to conquer the the emotional feeling of the scare and the fear, and also the difficult of challenge of a life, in the countryside. And I did a lot of art during the break time, on the draw, especially, in the countryside, it's very poor, there's nothing wrong. So you use the stone you can find on the ground, you use a brick, you use mud, use whatever you do. I did in the field. And the farmer, the villager farmer, look at the art I did, say, oh my God, you did so great. We should make you a village art to do the mural for us. So later they really made me to do the mural. I spent like sometimes whole months do a big giant mural for them. And I did mural a lot of places. And so this is the time I recognize how important art can be for especially in the poor, stressful, harsh life, and can lift you up and help you emotionally obtain a positive energy. And before that, art just my hobby. When I was a young kid, my dad is inspired me doing draw. He bring all his textile engineer. He bring the textile design book come back home. Every time he bring that, it's my like magic bullet. I really love to see it. So, but until I went to countryside and my art is intensified, that helped me go through this difficult life. This few pieces of art I want to share with you is my art I did in countryside during that cultural revolution. On the left, this is a little red guard with the Chinese ink painting and color, and middle is like study of art, and that's what I have. Very simple. And you just do a draw or something, and then harvest, because you don't have a store to buy food. You have to harvest the grain from, grow them, harvest them, and grinding them up, have a food. So you really learn a tough life, and you learn life first. So, but I didn't know at that moment, this part of art really helped me set up, connect my life in the next, and planting the seeds for my future. I'll show you the next, what I mean. So when 10 years cultural revolution is over, there's a college opens up. So I passed the exam and become college student. So I decided to learn a science. So the first thing I discovered in college is the microscope study for plants and microbial interaction. I was so amazed by those microscope. I see, oh my God, you almost feel like an art inside the science. So I was attracted to that tool and to that process. So so that seeds grow. And I studied in college for plant disease, see how the fungus can destroy the plants and the cell and tissue and cause a big harm. And then I want to learn more. So I came to US to study in Wisconsin medicine for plant and mycorrhizae interaction. That's a fungus. How plant mycorrhizae form the symbiotic relationship to help each other for nutrient uptake for their growth development. After that, I got my Ph.D. to study the plant and the actinorhizal plants for the bacteria frankia interaction. So this is an example of my study. This is like a root from a nodule. So they form a little factory called root nodule. This is for example, this is root nodule for alnus. That's what you see alder tree. They can fix the nitrogen. The little bacteria come in to fix the nitrogen the plant can do. So quite often, more industry level, they use industry use energy to making fertilizer. But this is natural process of fertilizer factory by the bacteria. So I studied this is fluorescence microscope for nodulation. And then this is for electron microscope. This is to show Frankia, hypha, the structure, how they get into the plant tissue to perform the function. So this is just an example. And after that, I did more of a fluorescence confocal microscope, digital computer microscope, all study the architecture of the plant cell and the tissue. So that art in science follow my footstep as a scientist all the way through. So then I become state scientist. I want to show you, for example, my climate art and watershed art. So this one show you like in Yosemite, Half Dome during the drought. This is like the now snowpack compared with this is the baseline. Where's a big snowpack? What's the impact of snowpack in the watershed for the drought, for the environment, from a climate change? And this is use art to translate the complex model here developed by engineer, and to learn what's vulnerability window, which part is vulnerability to cost of fire, which is related to hydrology changes from wet to dry this year. So this shows up art can be very powerful to tell the complex science story to the public, to communicate that science sometimes they just don't have that type of the way to do stuff. So this is the impact of a climate on cold water fish species, especially salmon. Salmon, when temperature arise, their life cycle is impact, especially their when they was young, the egg hatch, when they grow, the life cycle process. So this expresses concern about cold water fish species from climate change for high water temperature. And this is a bio art. I did use fluorescent culture bacteria, and see then when you put the bacteria, when you paint it with bacteria, when they grow up, they fluoresce. So then you can took the art image for that. This is the one bio art. This is all this related to my study in Berkeley, my later in the state scientist in California. And also art can be very powerful in the workplace, in the conference, workshop, in museum, as the way to tell the story, to communicate with people, to have a positive energy in the workplace. This is just a few examples what I use in my workplace. And here I want to just show you a few more the Sitka inspiration. So I went to Sitka, I have a strong sense of this environmental setting with Chinese ink, because they're all the foggy, moist, quickly shifting type of the air, and I really want to use a lot of ink. So this one is I want to doing some abstract type of art combined with Chinese collaborative mountain. This is a character of a mountain, and to show the cascade head. That's the big of the landmark here, landscape art here. So I use the tree bark, mosses, lichens, all integrate with my art piece. Then I did all use a natural imprint with bark and moss and the tree and to express the tree. And also I use some like a food, like a potato, carrots, made some imprint also. I did this piece of art. I developed oil, water-based oil painting. To this whole piece is like forest connection, interconnect the forest. Especially I was inspired, there's a lot of elder tree that I show you, I did some science work. So quite often artists, you have to be very sensitive and response to environmental setting. This is the first week after I did that, I did those pieces, developed a new approach to express my feeling, my response to the environment. So, and also I developed contemporary, this is the attempt to develop contemporary botanical art, use leaf imprint. This is Alder's leaf imprint. I developed a new way, used water-based oil painting with oil pastel. And also combined with Chinese calligraphy together with some foil embodiment. So develop some way to collage with all the leaves together. So develop some contemporary botanical art. So I don't want to try to talk too much approach, but if you're interested in the future, I plan to give a workshop in the future in the art center. So I will teach those how you develop your own, well, to communicate, to make a conversation with the beautiful nature here. So I want to really thank you so much for the Sitka gave me this opportunity to present everything, and the staff here is very supportive, and artists, we shared a lot of idea exchange. It's a wonderful place to be. But I want to share your final thought. And so I think there's a lot in common between artists and scientists. For example, you have to be all creative and with curiosity and to explore, to discovery, and to do experimentation and not feel afraid about failures. So, and also it's you all have to work hard and not worry about money. So artists, scientists, those two career doesn't making big money like business people. So, and also there's a difference. So like an artist is encouraged to do something very unique. Not somebody else will, you don't repeat somebody else. Maybe you can learn, but you don't repeat same thing. But for science, you want to discover something common, and someone else can repeat your experiment, can repeat your sense. It's as a rule and as a principle. So that's the big difference. And also science is more objective. So they're emotional neutral. But as an artist, you are really highly charged for emotion. Without emotion response, your art pieces, I can't imagine what art pieces that will be. So those is something that I think in my head, I think about it quite often, but I don't want to emit another one. Is the really art is really powerful, compassionate way to deal with fear and stress and depression, all the difficult times. They lift you up. They give you positive energy to against negative impact around all over the world. So no matter where you come from, who you are, there's unified languages and cross-cultural experiences. So this is all of a sudden the beauty of the art bring me to the life. And finally, I think it's very important when you connect with my cross-culture and this 40 years experiences, I'm thinking you never, sometimes one point of a life is always connect with other part of a life. But at that moment, you might not recognize how important that would be. Because for example, I was in the countryside, I never know that seeds is flourished all my life. It's make me connect with all the dot together. So, and so just appreciate every point of your life. You're making connection for you in the future. So I think that's all I want to say, but I hope I don't talk too much. So if you had a question, whatever, so well, you can email to me. And I know I'm in the last one, it's a dinner time. And thank you so much and to listen to me.
Thank you, Qinqin. There are some wonderful comments coming in for you and for everyone in the chat. I'll just read a couple and bring us to a close. Beautiful work, Dr. Liu, and a fascinating view into the backstory, what it was like to grow up during the Cultural Revolution. And thank you to all the residents for sharing their process, art, discovery, and interests. I'm so inspired by the readings, explanation, science, and culture. You all made a culmination of things to mull and marinate on, and you certainly inspired me for weeks to come. There was, just in closing, there was a line in Anissa's poem about placing a hand under your head, and that's how tonight felt to me, starting with Mason's reading and the magical realism of his world. I just felt like I was being taken on a journey by the ghost of Sitka present into a cave on an unimaginably small island with an unimaginable number of bones in it, or Qinqin trying to, and I think succeeding at fitting 40 years of interdisciplinary work into 10 minutes. So I just really appreciated all of those pullings and stretchings. Deborah talking about a foot in one world and a foot in another. It felt very magically real to me. So thank you to Mason, Anise, Sarah, Deborah, and Qinqin for sharing your practice with us and your time with us at Sitka. Everyone, please spend the next 6 weeks painting or whatever will make you very, very, very happy. We're so glad you all tuned in. Our next talk is on December 2nd with Michael Wimberly, and then on December 16th, our next resident talk. Good night, everyone. Thanks so much.